Governor Gretchen Whitmer declared a state of emergency over the weekend to bring more energy to Michigan home.
20% of our economy is tied to the auto industry, which depends on a steady flow of goods from our largest and closest trading partners.
I would say in the last month, we've seen gas price wars, which we never really experienced too much before.
Cars line up for blocks, engines humming idly as drivers anxiously eye-price boards over half-empty pumps. Some stations have run dry, others ration a few gallons per customer. The crisis traces back to Alberta, Canada's oil hub, now choked by new restrictions after Ottawa slashed exports in response to Washington's latest tariffs. What started as a cross-border policy spat has seeped into daily life, spiking gas prices and straining freight networks that deliver food and essentials across the Midwest. Governors are raising alarms, demanding swift action, while experts warn time is running out. Without restored fuel flows, the northern U.S. faces shortages that could ripple through households and businesses. How deep will this cut, and how far will the fallout spread? It began in the Pacific Northwest, where Washington's long border with British Columbia once ensured steady fuel and trade. Ports in Seattle and Tacoma, gateways to Alberta's oil, became the epicenter of a sudden rupture. Ottawa's export cuts, a retaliation to tariffs, hit like a tsunami. Overnight, shipments plummeted by over half. Storage tanks that kept the region fueled hit record lows, and tankers that carried Alberta's crude left Seattle's docks empty. The response was immediate and harsh. Gas stations in Seattle, Spokane, and Bellingham hung out of fuel signs or rationed what remained. Lines stretched for blocks, drivers queuing before dawn for 8 or 10 gallons at most. By week's end, prices soared past $6 a gallon, levels unseen in over 2 decades. Rural towns faced worse, with pumps bone dry, stranding entire communities. The disruption didn't stop at gas stations. Washington's economy, tethered to energy flows, began to unravel. Fishermen in Puget Sound, reliant on diesel, kept boats docked, watching a season's catch vanish. Shipping firms canceled a third of their routes, upending supply chains. Apple and cherry growers, on the verge of harvest, feared their fruit would rot before reaching markets. Analysts warned of worse to come. Fuel prices could hit $7 a gallon. Port traffic could collapse. And small businesses reliant on trucking might shutter permanently. Thousands of miles away, Michigan felt the same strain. The birthplace of America's automotive industry depends on crude flowing south through Line 5 and Enbridge pipelines. Alberta's cuts sent shockwaves within days. Fuel reserves in Detroit, Flint, and Grand Rapids fell to critical lows, with prices jumping from $3.95 to $4.65 in a week. Stations capped sales at 10 gallons, and industries reeled. Michigan's role as a Great Lakes transport hub amplified the crisis. Long-haul routes to Ohio and Illinois halted, clogging warehouses with unmoving goods. Frozen food distributors in Detroit reported spoilage as trucks sat idle. Auto plants in Detroit, Dearborn, and Lansing slowed production, cut shifts, and sent workers home. Governor Gretchen Whitmer declared an energy emergency, releasing state reserves and extending trucker hours to keep fuel moving. Calls for federal negotiations with Ottawa intensified, with temporary measures like suspending fuel taxes under consideration. Yet Michigan's reliance on Alberta's pipelines exposed a fragility that turned critical almost overnight. In New York, along the St. Lawrence River, communities in Jefferson, Franklin, and St. Lawrence counties faced the same spotlight. Dependent on fuel from Quebec and Ontario, stations either closed or limited hours. Rural families drove 50 or 60 miles for gas, only to find rationed supplies. Farmers and small businesses bore heavier costs at the worst time. In Watertown and Plattsburgh, cars lined streets before dawn, chasing limited fills. Ambulances got priority, but public transit routes were cut and freight schedules slashed. Prices spiked over 30% in a week, hitting $5.30 to $5.50 a gallon in border towns, the highest in years. This wasn't just inconvenience. It reshaped how communities moved, worked, and lived.